last time we met on Friday, I think.
Okay.
Um, so I was just gonna follow up really quick to see if you had a chance to go over that email and um, if you wanted to discuss anything about that and just ask about what the final outcome, I guess, would be for the class for myself.
Are you still waiting for me to decide?
No, I said in the
Oh,
email.
you've made a great
I
claim
just
there.
wonder.
Like, okay.
I was just wondering if you agreed or if you feel like there was a little bit.
Have you asked for anybody else's opinion besides mine?
Yes, I asked. I just asked Wen and Eric's opinions.
Yeah, they're nice. They're good people. Because they'll just give you good grades, right? What'd they say?
Yeah, maybe I should have asked someone not biased.
Yeah, they like you. They've worked with you. Of course, they're gonna say nice things about you, right? Just give them plenty of reasons to say nice things about you.
I hope so. Maybe they're just nice to my face. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. This quality evaluation of your learning is no simple task to wrestle with.
It's not.
That's why I continue to invite people into it. It's as we try to tackle challenging problems like this that you can start to really understand how far quality practices can really take you, and different quality management techniques and patterns. Um, I usually talk to people about tracking your time. You've done that in this. I see that you did a, a time tracking thing. That's easy, right?
Yeah, it's like super easy.
Estimating it is really easy. Getting precise time tracking. Did you track this clear through the semester?
What did you say? I'm sorry.
So what was your frequency of recording your time? Was it daily? Was it weekly? Was it just looking back over the semester and estimating? How did you go about your time tracking?
It was weekly.
Okay.
Sometimes more than weekly, but it was pretty. It was like 90% weekly. I would just review the week and log it in.
What did you learn about the quality of your time? Not just the quantity of it, but what did you learn about how to spend your time in better ways to enhance your learning? Any insights that you gained from that?
Yeah, I I learned that I had to go in with a plan for how I was going to spend my time. Not necessarily like how much, but if I was going to engage in like activity for that evening or for that week,
Uh-huh.
I'd I'd have to come up with a goal to make that time effective because I could, yeah, sometimes I'd spend more time than less time, but if I didn't have like a specific outcome I wanted, then the more time didn't really matter.
Yeah.
Then
Purpose
less
driven.
time, then less time with an outcome, you know?
Yeah. Somehow the purpose driven approach just yields a lot more, right?
Yeah, because there's times where I spent like 3 or 4 hours doing several things with the projects, but I guess it really wasn't effective because I just had a plan to like work on it, but that's not really good enough. I needed a specific outcome. Like, all right, I'll get this done and complete this phase and whatnot. And that definitely yielded more than 3 or 4 hours of work.
Um, looking back at the, I'm looking back at your PM certification one here.
Yes.
It looks like that was the one that you ended up just abandoning that one after a while. Looks like that, right?
Yeah, I got behind. There
Mm-hmm.
was like a part two to the Inbot guide,
Uh-huh.
and I was getting caught up in other projects too. Yeah, so that's where I
And
kind of
it probably
stopped
started.
at.
That second section probably feels like it's starting to repeat itself, right?
Yeah, well, even like towards the second half of the first
Yeah.
section, it was like
Uh-huh.
different principles, but the way they wrote the block, it was really similar and repetitive. Just
Yep, it does.
the way they like frame it um, in context with the other principles that they teach you is like really similar.
Yep.
And
I don't
so
envy anybody trying to write a textbook on project management because it's such an interesting topic, but in order for it to become valuable across different fields, it turns into abstractness. And with
yeah,
the
and
abstractness, it starts to feel like this is really dry and boring and hard to understand, right?
yeah, and I think that's what. Well, I think they tried to do the opposite with the Pinbot Guide, and they tried to not make it as abstract as possible, but then it ended up being, I don't know, essentially like the same idea of how they presented
It just
each
very,
topic.
yeah, it feels very non-relevant most of the time. Like, how does this apply?
Yeah, I mean, like all the charts of how they put I don't know, for example, planning or skill management, how they like displayed it visually was pretty much how they played other parts of it visually the same. So it was like, yeah, like you said, kind of repetitive, and I felt like I was doing the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Any advice that you'd give? Well, let me ask you this. Are you planning to ever go back and finish the certification?
Yes, I am. So I have lots of time before. Well, I have lots of time this next semester and like over the summer before like I start um my job, and I still do have a plan to do that. I'm still reaching out to my project managers at work right now, and so I feel like I've gotten a really good foundation from this past semester. I think the biggest thing that I need to do to help prepare for that is just application of what I've learned. And so I still do have a plan, and I want to dedicate myself more time to the certification than what I did this semester, because I still do want to do it.
What?
And so yeah.
I'm just looking to see. There you are. So, did you do any of the tests um, in iLearn? Because there's some sample tests that go right along with the PMP and CAPM certifications in there. Did you do any of those?
I did the first few chapters, but not past that. Um, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm just kind of curious if you are intending to go on. I'd be curious to see where you are right now. Whether that impacts your grade or not. That's not. I'm not as worried about that. I'm not trying to force you to take it so that I can base your grade on it. I'm just saying I think it's wise for you. If you intend to continue on, you need to see, okay, how much time have I invested in this? How have I studied? And is that preparing me at the level that I need to be ready for the certification?
Yeah. And I think that's the part that I need to do now, is just to start giving myself like exams and practice tests.
Yeah.
Tests, and
One of
I
the
feel like
things
I have
that
a what was that?
one of the things that I wish I could have done. I've done three, four. Yeah, I've done four different certifications. Um, and what I wish I would have learned earlier from doing all that was to get better at analyzing my usage of time and start examining my own study habits and patterns to try to figure out where's the best use of my time and energy. Um, what I've found in that myself is that I need a level of application to go along with a level of conceptual and theoretical type learning. I've got to do something that helps tie those together for me before things really start to stick and stay and I truly comprehend them at a level that I can do well on the test. Um, but I'd encourage, if you're doing this kind of time tracking approach already, that's a really great way to start to, as you take practice tests along the way, you can start to get a quantitative feel for what types and modes and patterns am I following as I study, and which ones are actually yielding an increase, a marked, how much of an increase are they yielding on my practice test results and those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
I wish I would have taken more of a quantitative approach to that. And which is funny for me to say that because I'm typically very not quantitative oriented.
Yeah.
I typically find that there's far more value in the qualitative side of things. But when I'm preparing for a certification, I found that I've got to link up the qualitative side of it with some quantitative to give me a better feedback system and understand where that's all leading. So I make good use of my time. Otherwise, I know how I study. I prefer to go off and just study and go down a rabbit hole for a while and explore something or some shiny object that catches my attention. I tend to want to study and over focus on that without ever figuring out whether it's helping me get ready for a test or not.
Yeah, I think I kind of fell into that trap a little bit with studying these.
And so I think different modes of study help you for different kinds of purposes. If you're trying to become a better person and a better project manager, I think the best way to do that is through experience. Just go do it. Go be a project manager, but then connect that up with other ideas and let that drive other questions and other interactions that you have with other professionals and those kinds of things. But if you're going for a certification test, I would switch my mode.
Oh, that's interesting. So those quizzes and exams that you have posted on Canvas, do you have that like available outside of the course, or?
I don't know how that is controlled. Do you still have access to old courses after a semester ends? I don't know what it looks like from the student end. I know I still have access to them, but I don't know what it looks like from the student side.
I can check right now. That's a good question.
And I don't know if they change access. I don't know when they do that. If they wait till the next semester, or if they wait till you graduate, or if they wait till, I don't know. I don't know how that works.
Actually, I think it looks like I'm still able to access. Yeah, so I just accessed one of my last classes in the winter, and it looks like I still have.
So I put due dates on these quizzes, but I also allow for late takes. So it shouldn't prevent you from getting in and taking the quiz. It'd mark it in my gradebook as late.
Right, but
I think you can still get in and take those quizzes even after the term.
okay.
Probably what I'd say is you can be my test case. You can try to get in. If it doesn't work, contact me back and we'll see what we can do to make it available.
Okay, that would be a great resource. Yeah, I'll try that. And I have lots more time now, and so that's something that I can.
And there's lots of other practice tests and practice quizzes out there, especially for the PMP, because it's such a well-known, widely spread one. There's a lot of resources out there to help you with it. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, but use what you can where you can.
Yeah, my project manager at work, she's pointing me to some resources, but they're all like the courses that you pay for, that give you like the practice exams along with the learning course and everything. And so
A lot of times, as a faculty member, I can purchase those and then put them back into my course too, and it makes it a lot cheaper if I spread that across a lot of different people.
okay. Yeah, so I was just keeping up as options.
Yeah. Have you looked in any further into comparing different certifications with each other to determine which one might be your best fit?
Yeah, so I know there's like the different, what's it called? Specific, Oh, sorry. It just
specializations within.
there's like Six Sigma.
Mhm.
There's there's Lean. And there's like specific Agile certifications.
Yep.
And so, yeah, there's like a lot of different ones. There's like more ones are like there's a lot that are more specific than just the CAPM or the PMP.
Because the CAPM's trying to be as wide and broad as it can, which some
Yeah.
I think when you try to do that, you end up. The saying goes, if you try to be all things to all people, you quickly find out that you're nothing to everyone.
That's funny.
And I think that kind of follows this pattern in this case. When you try to spread too far and wide and broad with project management, it ends up being so abstract that, yeah, it's not that any of it's wrong, but it's less practical. It's less applicable sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's not that it's inaccurate. It's still true and it still does apply, but it doesn't apply at a level that is practical in helping you see how do I apply this in a way that it actually makes an impact to my work on a day-to-day basis. And
That
the PMBOK guide does have some impact, but I think the other certifications have more of a practical day-to-day impact. That's just my take on it.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah, the PMI definitely tries to please everyone for its certifications.
Okay. One of the things that I often get nervous with people that claim an A for a grade is the impact on the class and the class organization level. You and Wen had an impact on the class, but a lot of it came at the very end. When it was kind of too late to really change the culture, the format, or it was really hard to overcome the habitual inertia that we had encountered over the course of the semester.
Right.
You're giving me some feedback for how I try to influence the class for next semester, but a lot of that needs to be done at the level of actually impacting the students that are in that class. Sharing your ideas will go to some level, but having it come from you makes a bigger difference. You notice as you guys have been working with students in the class, you get better feedback and more rich feedback than I do because you're a student. People will open up to you guys more than they do to me because I'm a teacher and have the title of a teacher. People don't open up to me as much.
Yeah, that's true.
So thank you for what you're doing there and for gathering input and trying to give me some recommendations on where to go next semester. It really does make an impact, and I pay attention to that stuff. I try to make my ears as big as I can and hear what students are saying, but I also try to turn around and make my ears as big as I can towards employers and understanding where they're coming from and what they're looking for in potential candidates. And I try to pay attention to the mission of this university and what we're trying to accomplish with our vision. And from all that, I try to formulate a plan and a path that works as best as I can. It's why the class is what it is right now. And I know the class isn't perfect. I know that your experience isn't perfect. But what I see students walking away with in terms of getting their feet under them and learning to not wait around for somebody else to lay it all out for them, in terms of trying to manage their own time and manage themselves towards some kind of a goal and learning how to set that goal and learning how to gather information and feedback about how well they're achieving that goal. When I put you in the driver's seat, it's funky and it's weird and people aren't used to it, but I see that you guys start to grow in ways that you wouldn't if I ran the class any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So I've still been willing to make that trade-off of, yeah, I know this comes across as unorganized, as nobody knows what's going on, but honestly, that's as I looked at my own experiences and as I've talked to other people, when I ask them, what's it like when somebody put you in charge of something for the first time? I get a very similar description of, well, it's it's disorienting. You know, it's hard to figure out. You mean I can do this any way I want, and I've just got to figure out and use my best judgment to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that is meaningful or purposeful or that yields something. That part of it becomes very disorienting for people. And I feel like giving you an experience like that is probably one of the most valuable things they can do.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, well, I mean, I think I will experience that in the real world too. So better now than later.
Yeah, I'd rather do it when you have some support around you of other people going through the same thing and then reaching out and saying, hey, what are you learning from all this? Uh, is this working for you? How are you doing? What is working? What's not? Why?
Yeah, and everyone that we've talked to, no one said that they didn't learn a lot
Mm-hmm.
um, from their experience in both sections of the class, and so I think that was really valuable. Kind of proved that it works. I mean, we are uncomfortable, but that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for what you sent. I think you've done a great job documenting, you know, where you're at and what you did and how it got there. Because of that, I think I can give you the grade you're asking for.
Okay.
The other point of feedback I'd give you is that on the other evaluation that I do, um, for accreditation purposes, they ask us to evaluate students based on the 4 buckets: unsatisfactory, developing, proficient, and outstanding. And I think I talked to you about that once already, right?
Yeah, we've talked about that a few times.
And I gave you kind of an evaluation where I saw you and where I felt you were at.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that?
No, I guess just like general advice for like the future, I guess, like in real life situations moving forward from outside of like the scope of the class. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess what's the best or what's some advice that you can give to someone like starting down this path of like project management, or what have you seen people be successful at the beginning or not successful at the beginning that would be helpful?
This is my opinion on that is that the more that you'll get into quality management approaches and techniques and tactics, the faster you'll progress. And
Okay.
I don't try to hide that. I try to bring that out from the very beginning of the semester. And most people don't really want to get into it too deep. You took a couple of um, stabs at it with your at the end. You came up with a couple of different approaches to it. And the greater detail that you get into with that, I feel like the faster progress you make. Because the reason for that is, to me, quality lives and breathes in the detail of every project. Right? That's where the risk lies, and that's where the quality lies. And it's not until you start drilling into the depth and detail and making comparisons across projects and trying to say what carries across from one project to the other and what doesn't and why, and you know, which methods can I make use of and which techniques can I make use of and why, and when do they fit and when do they not fit. And it's driving those questions with a hunger and thirst to really understand them that starts to bring a student up to a higher level, I think. And I see that you've done that. I would encourage that you continue to pursue that with a greater hunger.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it was definitely challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it would be, I don't know, just taking lots of practice,
Yeah, but
taking a lot more jabs at it.
so for example, I'd encourage, out of the list of evaluation methods, I'd probably encourage you to try the PM tool belt for one, project manager tool belt, which is about developing your sets of methods and techniques and mechanisms and looking down inside of those methods at a greater fine-grained level of detail. so that you understand the tools and techniques, and you've practiced and experimented with them, so you can kind of see when they work and when they don't and why. So I'd encourage that one, and probably the other one would be the house of quality technique.
Okay.
If you practice with those ones drive you to greater levels of detail, and I think you'd find that they yield a lot. They're very rich and dense as you practice and work with them. I feel like that tunes your capacity and your ability to discern projects at an even richer level, and you become better as a project manager faster. So those are the next that I'd point you to.
Can you repeat those ones again? The
PM tool belt, or the project manager tool belt.
Okay.
And the other one is the house of quality.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So the house of quality has more support resources on it. If you go out and look online, you go out and look at different websites, there's places out there that'll kind of train you on how to use it. And I would say don't just look at one place, don't just look for one source on how to use it. Look across a couple different sources, across a couple of different industries. It's fairly strongly used in product development, and specifically like mechanical engineering. Those mechanical engineers are the ones that brought it to my attention. But then you can use that same technique in a lot of other areas. In the IT field, I think we could use it a lot better than we do. We don't tend to use it at all, which I think is part of why a lot of our products aren't as good as they could be. But the PM tool belt one is one that there's not as much training on it, because it's one that I've started to develop. So you're not going to find other people that describe or show you how to use it. But it's one that I think if you'll just practice at the fundamental pieces of it, over time you can develop kind of your own habit or your own pattern towards how I continue to learn project management techniques and ideas and principles and practices throughout your life. And that's what I was aiming at, is something that could become a lifelong tool or a lifelong pattern or habit.
Oh, that makes sense.
And one that could just continue to build upon itself.
Okay, I highlighted those, so
Yeah.
I have a copy of the evaluation methods.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks, Napoleon.
Thank you for meeting with me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the course as well, and I hope, you have a good holiday break. I'm sure it is needed.
You too. I'm sure you won't mind it either, right?
Oh, I don't. I traveled home this past weekend to Florida, which is why I'm not
Oh, gotcha.
physically there, so I'm enjoying it already.
But you're enjoying it without this piece of chocolate sitting on my
desk. That's true. I'll have to come back, rain check on that.
That's right. Okay. Thanks, Napoleon.
All right.
Have a good one.
Brother. You too.
See ya. Bye. Ethan, what are you waiting for? I've been waiting for you for quite a while here. Shush. It's been at least 4 seconds that I've been waiting for you to get in here. Okay, if I'm still recording you here. Yeah, that's fine. Any more of those keep going today?
Oh, I just put some gum in.
Oh, man, good time. Always have a good time.
some of the last stuff here. All right.
Of the last minute. Let's see, how last minute can we possibly get? That's
Yeah.
not coming.
Okay. So.
How we doing?
Minimize that for a second. So, things that we kind of talked about are grading. You know, are we grading on overall competency, and then are we grading on growth specifically? And yeah, I did.
You keep learning from our friends. Let's see if we can do this in 15 minutes. Can we do it in 15 minutes?
Me?
Yeah.
If you can listen real fast. The only reason I really took an hour is just because I was like, let's.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, better safe than sorry, and I don't know, get distracted. But I'll see how fast we can do it. Might as well. So the things that we kind of have talked about are you can grade competency over, you know, like when I leave this class, how competent am I going to be? Or we can grade how much have I grown in this class. So we've got 13 weeks, you know, how well did I do in those 13 weeks in coming in and starting and finishing. And I kind of, as I thought about that when I left, I realized I think I've done a lot of work before class. And to some extent, I think that deserves a little credit. I've taken a lot of time in other classes to, for example, one of my networking classes, before I even took the networking class, I got online and researched around and spent several hours watching different explanational videos on networking and what's going on, and you know, just understanding some of the basic concepts. And then when I took the actual class in school, it was a lot easier for me than a lot of other students. And I was like, that's the way to do that. So I've tried to replicate that.
Prepare, teach one another, ponder, improve. That prepare part actually does some good.
Yeah. Well, and
I agree.
And I found that since I was able to catch on a lot quicker in that class, it was a lot easier for me to get through what I needed to get through there and move on to the next class and focus. And I've noticed that kind of inadvertently with my foundations classes, because a lot of them tend to go over very closely what I went over in high school, and so it's more of a, all right, let's do this again, you know?
I wonder about that myself. My kids are in classes right now. Like, you think
Mm-hmm.
we don't need to do this over and over and over again when it's the same stuff, it seems like. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do, because it's the
Yeah.
repetition that allows us to get to a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And without, that's why I'm a fan of iteration.
Mm-hmm.
Iteration of going through it again, but with the purpose of deepening it, making it better, making it richer, making it stronger.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good pattern.
Yeah. Well, and that's why
And just repetition.
I haven't really minded it too much, because it means I can get through the class kind of easy to some extent, because I paid a lot of attention to high school. I didn't know it, but people had said that would pay out, and I was like, all right, if you think it's going to pay out, you know, I'll go ahead and invest. And so I invested, and I think I invested a lot more than a lot of other students did in necessarily learning material. Coming out the other end, I think my life is significantly different, and my understanding of things are significantly different than theirs was, and it's kind of reflected in lifestyle choices. And
hopefully that makes you more powerful and stronger when you leave here as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of hoping. At least that was the idea. I saw some value in it before, might enjoy it as I continue.
Okay.
So I feel like I've got we've talked a lot about, you know, overall competency, and I would feel very like if we were going to go and look at the rubric, if I were to say my competency, I would feel very confident saying I'm definitely between sufficient and significant. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm outstanding, I don't think I necessarily have the experience to prove that I'm outstanding.
Is that on each different outcome you feel like you're in the same
I'm saying
spot,
as
or
like
is
an
there a difference?
overall.
Okay.
There might be a little variation in here, and I think a part of that comes from just practicing. Like sometimes I look at that and I'm like growth and capacity and disposition to act and not be acted upon. Sometimes I'm like, I'm really good at that in this scenario, but in other scenarios, am I that good at it? So it kind of makes it.
That word in there somewhere. No, not on that one. It's a different. Okay.
Yeah. So I think to some extent, like if I'm going to be 100% honest with myself, I really can't see myself necessarily justifying too much past significant. And I say that just with the understanding that seeing what other people have accomplished, and I know this is kind of breaking one of my own personal rules as far as judging what other people have done, but I mean, studying my peers, those who have been given similar resources to me and similar opportunity to me, how am I stacking up as far as, am I reaching my potential? And I understand that doesn't necessarily give a great picture, but it gives us a picture. And sometimes a picture is significantly better than no picture, unless it's in the case of Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster. Then it just raises a lot more questions.
That's true. That's true. You had a point there.
So I'm not going to get
Great example. I love that one.
So I'm not going to get too in depth, but it gives us kind of an idea.
Yep.
And I say that because if you've played games at all, and I think that this has kind of been mentioned, there's in the strategy games that I've played, and one in particular, there's the concept of, do you wait or do you rush? If you wait, you can build up your resources and build up your economy in your game, so that when you do attack, you'll be able to sustain that attack much longer. If you rush, you can kind of kick the other guy in the groin, and he's going to have so much of a harder time that you can still get back into the game. And so you see kind of like the person who rushes will initially have a great start, but then they're not necessarily capable of sustaining that. And the person who chooses to wait can be kicked and totally taken out of the game, but other times they come back in such a mean way that the other person is just like, yep, that's it. Like there's nothing.
I provoke this?
Yeah. You definitely poked the bear.
Yep.
And so I kind of think, you can't necessarily judge the first 15 minutes of the game and say, you're going to know the end. Because that's just you're never going to be 100% correct. And if I'm looking at my own life, 24 years old, average lifespan as an American is around 78 years old as a man. I'm not in the late game. I'm not even halfway through the game. I'm in the first third. So, like that kind of depends, the actions that I made in that first third largely will control the ending of the game and impose maybe certain restrictions, but it doesn't necessarily control it directly. No. So, and that's why I think on a lot of this, I recognize that I just, in that first third, I don't have the experience. I see myself, where do I see myself in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years?
Okay.
I see lots of room for improvement and lots of room for putting into practice and failing and to get back up and just say, all right, that didn't work. How can I improve?
In 50 years, according to your timeline, you're kind of wrapping things up.
Yeah, in 50 years, it is wrapping things up. And that's a question, like, how are you going to wrap things up? I think an entrance is just as important as an exit, because what you leave, that's kind of going to be your legacy. Are you going to be like Carnegie and leave the world with many great buildings and whatnot, or are you just kind of going to insignificantly pass on and not affect anything? So
the toughest part about that is we don't ever know where the deadline is, so we can't cram it.
Right.
We don't know when the end
Well, and
is.
I think that's,
If I could do that with this course, I would.
Yeah, well, and I think a big part of that is.
I think it would change the way that people interact in the course tremendously.
Oh, yeah. And I think. I don't blame you. Because, I mean, it kind of shows, like, and you're right, like, there's always the that one kid, he had so much potential that people talk about, and then he died. And they talk about how much potential he had because of how much he had done in the first 20 years, 10 years, 17 years,
Almost 15.
Yeah.
He's still an excellent.
Yeah. Well, and that, it's what, that's always thinking about the potential. But I think that potential and what they did in those few years had such a significant impact that people thought that their potential was so much greater, and that encouraged them to do. And so you can see that their legacy, although short, not their legacy, but their life, although short, left a larger legacy because of what they did in that amount of time, not so much how much time they took. So I think I'm a little concerned now.
No, it's a sister of this young man that I mentioned. My friend's name was Jeff. His sister is compiling a memory book for him.
Oh, okay.
She's after some English.
Right on.
I pondered them. I have 3 pretty clear ones.
Mm-hmm.
But what she's after is stories of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my stories involve right near his death, just after his death, and then like 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs more about his actual life that I remember. Because I know that's what she's after, and I need to go back and kind of troll through the old memory banks to pull that out.
Yeah. Personally, I've found writing about those experiences to be helpful and just remembering them. It's kind of like going into deep storage, and what was going on at that time, But I'll leave that to you.
It's going to take,
Yeah. So I don't feel like...
Don't be worried. It's just somewhere other tangent.
Mm-hmm.
Come back.
Yeah. So if I were to look at my overall kind of capacity, I think I am sufficient in the fact that I have a track record. I have a career of 7 years, a job where I learned how to do a lot of things, have other jobs that back up that experience. And so I think there's a definite repeatability in me being able to hold a job and to prove that, hey, I'm of value to the company or the organization I'm a part of. I think that's a direct...
You chose to do kind of the essays.
Mm-hmm.
Have those yielded for you what you hoped they would yield?
Yes. Even though I didn't do as many as I thought I would do, they yielded a lot because they got me thinking, and that was what I needed them to do. And I didn't need to necessarily write them out, but I needed them to get me thinking, get me writing, kind of get some thoughts on paper, and then I get the traction, and then I just go from there. And so I think that's
how you learn.
Yeah. Well, and it's continually just kind of come back to me, as I continue to think and expand. And I use my work as a kind of a gauge for that because that's something that's very applicable, very real world. I'm being judged not by myself. I'm being judged by somebody who has a project that they are engaged in, and it's how am I helping in that project because they're going to give me sub-projects that need to be completed for the big project that actually will come through and work.
Okay.
And then I think the next thing that I would use is my academic career, pre-college and post beginning college, or I should say like K through 12 and college would be more accurate.
Okay.
And I think that my K through 12 career speaks pretty clearly. I won't go into detail, but I got a 3.8 at the end of it. So I feel like that shows that I had some dedication and I did things that not everybody was willing to do. And I think that speaks for itself, and I'm glad that I was able to do that. Or no, I didn't get a 3.8. I got a 3.89. That's what happened.
Oh, so close.
I was like, that 1/10 is
one
just...
more 10.
When I saw that, I was just like, I am mediocre.
No, 3.89 is not mediocre.
Well, I kind of felt that way because there was like a tassel that you would get if you got the 3.9. And so I'm like, I am mediocrity. It was kind of like a joke with myself, like I worked so hard to get so close to only to fail. I'm the king of mediocrity at this point.
At least you're keeping some.
Well, and the thing that makes it even funnier to me is I'm 5'9", which is kind of the average height. You know, like.
Wait a minute.
I just see a lot of things
Sensing a
about
theme here.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to me because the more I look at my life, I'm like, I am mediocrity.
But hey, you could be maybe you're Mr. Incredible. You're undercover. You're just trying to look much bigger to be.
You know, and you never know. Clark Kent kind of figure.
Something. Yep, it's got to be. I'm trying to blend in, and I'm doing really good.
So I think like that speaks to dedication and hard work. And I think in college, so I started college being married, and so I had literally been married a month when I first started college. And I failed one class in my first semester, and I'm happy that I failed that class. And that's not something I don't think any teacher would expect to hear. In fact, I think that teacher was kind of really disappointed in me because he was able to see how well I was doing. And then he kind of saw me just give up on his class specifically because I recognized that the amount of time that I was spending on his class was causing
Inordinate strain on others.
Yeah, so I kind of realized I can either. Oh, please don't crash on me. All right. Well, this may be oral indefinitely. This doesn't. We're just kind of hobbling out with this computer, and I'm starting to get the feeling that it's not necessarily going to make it. Yeah. So I felt really bad, but I kind of just I got a D, and I was like, that's the lowest grade I've ever gotten was a D, and I was like, that sucks, but I'm okay with it. And I recognized that if I was true to Ron Swanson's words, never half A two things, whole A one thing, and do good on the other. So I whole A in one thing and got really good grades on all the other classes, and I was happy with that. And I learned and recognized that there are certain things you don't do in line, like learn JavaScript and C++ at the same time, because that is so syntactically confusing.
Gum me up.
It gummed me up bad because I
We
would
didn't make
spend.
15 minutes. Yeah.
Oh darn! So I just recognized that I learned a little bit more on like what am I when you have goals, you need to make goals that are distinct and clear from each other, because if they're too similar, they're going to confuse each other and you're going to get in a big issue. So I think I can definitely say that I'm sufficient and possibly significant in that aspect. I think there's plenty of growth after this class, after this college career, that is going to be a lot of work, application, a lot of life. When you have kids, I feel like that's kind of the ultimate test of how good of a project manager are you, and that doesn't come until the 78 years have come and gone, and you're sitting at the judgment seat. I think is where that kind of gets your grade,
Decisions and actions are made every day.
Yeah.
Control over them. We get to affect what they become.
Mm-hmm. Which is very scary. I think it was my sister who told me who told me that was. She's like, she's like, my husband and I came to the realization that we're going to mess our kids up. Our goal is to mess them up, not too much. Mess them up in the right direction, and hopefully they can get it from there. And I kind of laughed at that, and then I thought about it a lot more, and I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's a pretty darn good point.
You're not going to get it right the first time.
Yeah, well, and I think looking back at my own childhood, I'm a little frustrated with the naivety of childhood and thinking that there is a perfect world, because it isn't, and it never will be.
Well, we think it is.
For our time period. Yeah.
It's not that hard to have a perfect life.
And I think as that naivety is slowly released, you see the complexity of life. And going back to the 4 boxes like Canavan. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Life is very much in the chaos and complex side. And I think as a child you see things very simply, and that doesn't necessarily. If you see things simply when you are in true chaos, you're not helping yourself. You need to understand the chaos to bring order.
Disorder.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why. Just complain about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
I love that with school because we try to treat school like it's this
I think there's.
factory,
Mhm.
and then it leads to all these things that we don't know how to deal with.
Yeah.
It's a classic case of disorder.
Hmm. And I think there's some essence of enjoying the chaos.
Yeah, I might try. Thinking about it. If we sit here for another 15 minutes, you might get some back.
So I think that there's a big thing in just taking that and realizing, ooh, there we go. Chaos and understanding it and appreciating it for what it is, and then taking the chaos and molding it into something that you want.
Appreciating that it gives us,
Mm-hmm.
it gives us the opportunity.
Yeah.
To look at it,
Mm-hmm.
pick up and go.
Yeah. And I think a big thing in that is in understanding that when you create order, you destroy chaos. And your definition of order defines chaos.
Mm-hmm.
In
Lexi theory, Tony called at the edge of chaos.
mm-hmm.
That's where all growth happens.
Mm-hmm. And
I
that
like
makes sense.
Concept makes sense to me.
If you think about that in the context of the plan of salvation, I think the Earth section approaches the edge of chaos very closely, because there wasn't a whole lot of. It's like, oh, by the way, we're gonna memory wipe you and drop you into a place and not tell you how things are necessarily going. We're gonna give you a little instruction, a little at a time.
Yeah, and then we'll give you a bone
And
here.
it's like,
You're like,
yeah.
what?
It's like, hey, wait a second. Like. And I mean, I say that thinking about Adam. He didn't have a quad. There was no quad. There was no triple combination. There was no Bible. There was.
I bet he was pretty earnest with Heavenly Father, please help me.
I can imagine his face. As you go down a roller coaster, you're just like, this is not. I should not have signed up for this. And that's the kind of face he would have.
And they got used to the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And then get kicked out. Wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was.
Hold on, wait a second.
Things got really weird.
So I think
the game of 1,000 years to figure it out.
Yeah, no, he got a lot more time and resources than I think we all did, and I think that was a good thing. So I think to some extent.
I don't know if we got more resources. We got more time. I don't know if we got better resources.
You got a different set of resources.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I'll leave that.
That's a good way.
I don't want to distract too much on that.
Okay.
So I think understanding that I think I'm beginning in sufficient, and at that level, I think to measure the growth, have I become in this class? Have I definitively become significant in my project management? If that makes sense. Because I think if we frame it as your the overall picture, in that, am I a beginner? No. Am I sufficient? I think that I can definitively say that, and I'm very confident in saying that. Now, how far beyond sufficient have I grown? And then measuring, did I grow at a beginner's pace? Did I grow at a sufficient pace? Did I grow at a significant pace? And then I grow at an outstanding. I think that's kind of the next level that you're kind of approaching. At least that's how I understood how you're approaching, the growth in the 13 weeks that we have. And if I'm going to approach that, I think, understanding that I start at significant and moving, or sufficient and moving into significant and into outstanding, how have I proved that? And that's where my artifacts come in to kind of show to you and to show to me, hey, this is true. So I went through my artifacts list here and I highlighted out different experiences that I've had this week, or not this week, these 13 weeks and 14 now, that I think prove that I'm moving well within significant. And I think that has been significant growth. Because if we're going to we're gonna go kind of by, I think the standard that you were kind of setting in how jumping from sufficient to significant and then significant to outstanding this is a very exponential graph.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I move overall from sufficient to significant, then that is, I think I think I could equate that to a significant growth period. Okay. And then if I were to be very much, if we were to kind of give this a 1 to 10 here, if I'm clear over here, then we could start to talk about I have made outstanding growth in my situation rather than just significant growth. So I think some big things that have happened in this semester that have required me to apply project management, that have required me to use the sufficient and the beginner and sufficient knowledge that I've gained and apply it and learn it. No, it won't. Yeah. Well,
Darn it all.
That's the after this class part that I've kind of alluded to. And so I think a big part of this class is setting up a structure in which I know how to, the growth rate exponentially increases as I'm exponentially trying to reach a higher goal.
Exponential expectations.
Yeah, and so I think one of the biggest things is being an executive secretary. And it addresses, I think, one of my biggest weaknesses, and that's human management. I want to open the old thing, but I'm not going to open it up because we've kind of seen it. But it was going to, just not going to risk it right now.
Otherwise, move.
So, and I say that because you have tithing settlement, I have scheduling, and then there's a spiritual health aspect to it, being sure that you're maintaining that and being close to Spirit so that you can participate in bishopric conversations and contribute what you do know about the Word and what you your spiritual impressions. And then
careful, you get more opportunities to do.
Yeah, I've known. So the trick is to do the job good enough to call it quits, but not too no.
I've always heard that it's the real goal, the real measure of success. If you can work yourself out of the job, you do it so well, you can automate the task, essentially, to where nobody needs to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you get to that level.
I don't know how you would do that as an
kind of,
executive
That's
secretary.
what it was. Executive secretary. I don't know how you pull that off as an executive secretary.
Well, and I say that
pretty human based.
because if I were to automate it, and I think there's a lot of parts I could automate about it, but it is human based, and I think that's the fundamental problem: is humans are flawed, so you can't. You're trying to perfect imperfection of something that will persistently be changing and persistently be imperfected. So,
kind of problem in artificial intelligence.
It sounds like a lot of infinities in there.
Lots of recursion.
Yeah. I think I would need to create an AI of some sort. Kind of like you're saying.
Yeah.
And then I think there was a new bishop. No, I don't think there was. There is a new bishopric in place in this past month. And that's a whole new project in and of itself, because now you're shifting from one bishop who has clearly, like I had kind of set up a whole year, and I was like, I got experience, and a new bishop comes in and says, all right, this is how we're going to do things. And my job, it hinges on the bishop. I have about 2 paragraphs that if I were to synthesize what they say into very few words, it would be, do what the bishop asks. And that would be it. As a secretary, I just do what he asks me to do. And a lot of times that includes scheduling, because that's kind of seen as the job of the secretary. But they, and they don't even explicitly say in there, you have to schedule. And I was like, that's interesting.
That's a good core part of what you're doing.
I was like, that's, right? Tithing settlement. Talk about getting, 100 or so couples in to meet with the bishop for 10 minutes, keep him on time, and allow for adjustments in the schedule so that as he's meeting with them, if he does go over, that you can correct for that. And
Isn't that fun?
yes.
I know what you're talking about in the last week of the semester.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the other fun part is our tithing settlement has a much shorter window than I think a lot of other tithing settlements because at the end of the semester, our wards disintegrate. Like Roman legions were decimated, and they had more men at the end of that decimation than our ward does at the
Good
end of
analogy.
the day.
Yep.
We go from 10
fully functioning and
state
fully,
to about one ward worth of people, and we have one meeting for 2 weeks of just. If you're in the States and you happen to be here, you know, why don't you come on?
And if you don't come, you're probably not the only one that's not coming. So
Yeah.
Good for now.
Yeah. So we lose all our ward members, so trying to get them in to meet with the bishop is a trick, and that's something that I was working on this last week. We had 10 couples, and the bishop's like, all right, text them, see what you can do, you know, reach out. And of the 10, I have notes. Of the 10,
down. Yep.
I got responses from a lot. There were 5 no replies. 2 out of towns, 1 busy, and 1 wasn't able to make it. Only 1 made it. And so I'm just like.
No replies if you just how would we try to contact them?
So the biggest thing I like to do is, and I've found that is you want to use this as your main form. And so, say I've got a ward member here. I have an address, I have an email address, and a phone. A lot of times I may or may not have a phone. Sometimes it doesn't end up being shown to me. Usually I have an address. Sometimes that address is like wmwdump@gmail.com.
Yep.
Fair enough. You know.
You're not getting through it out.
Surprise! I didn't get through. Yeah.
I used to have one that was I think it was Godfrey.jump or something. They'd use that anytime they needed an automated thing, huh? Here you go.
Yeah.
I'll give you my email address. It's not going anywhere.
It's an unmanaged email address, and nobody's gonna care.
You have like over 9,000 messages in it.
Yeah. And so then I can go knock on the door. Usually I avoid knocking on the door because by the time it comes to that point, Bishop's like, hey, I want to get involved at that point. So I usually use the phone and the email. I don't really worry about going.
Call them or do you just text them?
Call them, text them, and email them. If nothing comes back, and it repeatedly nothing comes back, then I talk with the bishop about it. And that may be because there's a situation that either a previous bishop is aware of, or there may be more going on, and that's why the bishop tends to be like wants to get involved with that because there may be more than just what we're thinking, and he wants to be involved at that point. And so I kind of just, all right, this is what's happened. I'll let you do your bishop thing. And then
we didn't make it in a half hour either. But
I don't know. So I think that has put a lot of strain as far as, you know, understanding how to work with the bishop and then adjusting to a new bishop and getting new instruction and fleshing out how I'm going to do that. And then it's hard because you see the no man can have 2 masters. And I'm experiencing that a lot because you either love the one and despise the other, or and it's kind of like, okay, I need to love both of the bishops, you know, I need to, because there's, you know, I got into I think a great routine with the previous bishop, and I knew what I was doing, and I had it under control, you know, and I felt like,
no. We don't keep the same bishop in forever.
Yep. And so now I need to, all right, you know, and I think it's great that we've got a new bishop, and I really like our new bishop, but at the same time, I'm like, it means my job gets upset a lot, you know, so I have to redo everything that I did a year ago and learning how to do my bishopric job, redo all that. We're going to go through kind of some of the same processes of, okay, maybe we actually don't want to do that. That doesn't seem to be as effective. And that's kind of frustrating for me because it's kind of like I already had it all figured out, you know, and sometimes he doesn't want to necessarily agree with me. And so then it's like, all right, well, I bend to your will because you're the bishop, you know, and I'm just here to support you. So it's kind of presented itself in.
Adaptation.
Yeah, so I think that's proved a lot of adaptation. And I had some skills in talking and communicating with people and setting things up. And so I was able to bring this to the table, but I had to adjust how I came to people because I wasn't coming to people with, hey, let's have a party. It's a lot easier to get people to show up to those things, like free food or we're gonna have fun. They have an investment in it. And this, not everybody necessarily has the same spiritual investment in their spiritual health and standing with the church, and so that can create some
Makes it interesting.
a little bit more interesting. And so you got to be very conscientious and a lot of we're gonna work about things. And I remember both bishops just have always been about. If it happens in the bishopric room, it stays in the bishop room. We don't talk about what happens here outside of it. Just you keep that between us. And if you have concerns, talk with those who are here, And that kind of.
Anything you've learned from this that you would say that you would recommend a different approach or a way to improve the whole thing next year?
As a class?
Yeah, tithing supplements.
Oh, with tithing supplements specifically?
I'm having some ideas about it. I'm just kind of curious what you're seeing.
The biggest thing I would say is let's not get a new bishop in the middle of tithing settlement. That, I think, without this being the Lord's work, I think that would have significantly changed the outcome. And I say that because since it is the Lord's work, a lot of stuff comes together that as an executive secretary, I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing here scheduling things because it seems like things still happen without me. I do a lot of scheduling, and then that schedule gets totally upset, and then everything gets done. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm here. Because the Lord has got his hands on this a lot more than I do. And to some extent. Yeah. Yeah.
You make your plans, I'll laugh at you, and then I'll help you.
Yeah. And so.
And then hopefully you learn a few things.
Right. And I mean, from my previous experience, I came in the middle of a tithing settlement, so I got to see the end, and about the same number of couples, although nearly completely different ward, about the same number of couples just not wanting to come in. And so to me, I think to some extent, I don't know how much improvement there can be so much as I think it comes down to the individuals who are coming in.
I've had the same experience with students coming into this class, and ones that disappear, and some just don't ever come back. And I've worked on this challenge last couple of semesters. One thing that I did different this semester was that I tried to make a better, more concerted effort to look for indicators of students that might end up in that bucket.
Yeah.
And try to pick them out earlier, and try to find ways to connect and reconnect with them, and it helped. By the end of the semester, I only had one student that I just couldn't contact all semester.
Yeah.
And I think you have a similar situation. I worked in an intelligence community for an internship. It was the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's what I kind of go back to as intelligence patterns. If I have a spy versus spy world, what am I going to look for? I'm going to look for early leading indicators.
Yeah.
And watch for those so that I start to pick up on which indicators I need to pay more attention to and which things I can let go by. And over time, I've got to get better and better at seeing things in the very early stages and doing small things to help reconnect and fix it. Otherwise, I end up with war.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that kind of pattern would help. Where and it's fall semester what you have to do with this, right?
Yeah.
That fall semester, a lot of investment needs to happen in September.
Yeah.
In trying to figure out who are going to be the ones that we're going to have the troubles with in December. And if we're starting on that then and working that problem early, working at September and October, by the time October ends, you should know who those people are.
Yeah.
And then all through the end of October and in November, you're working and working and working to close that gap. I think you'd end up with a smaller number by the end.
Yeah. Oh, and that would make a lot of sense. And a part of me not knowing what to suggest is the fact that
And it can't all come
Right.
question, who are these people going to be? They're the ones we need to reach the most.
Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of that is I don't necessarily have the experience with tithing settlement. This is my second. Well, I got half a tithing settlement, and then I got all of tithing settlement. So I'm at 1.5. Of my experience. So I if I were to say if I've got 1.5 of an experience of anything, I would never say that I know enough to make a change. And I say that with the intention of
still learning what the problems are and how the process
right.
works, right?
Well, and I think sometimes I've seen people kind of come into leadership positions and make a bunch of drastic changes, and I've done that. And you still find up you still find you have problems, and so a part of my process has totally changed into let's run it. Let's just run it. Let's just see.
That's why I was curious what you
and then make
so
little
far.
things. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what you've done is all right. One semester, make some small adjustments.
I've been at this for 10 semesters
now,
trying to deal with this problem, and so now I'm getting where I think I've started to figure out how I can go about this. And the way that I talk about it is with all the energy and zeal that I feel, but I try not to let that energy and zeal be the way that I act, because then you end up with the overreaction like you talked about.
Yeah. Well, and I think I don't know. I think I have a kind of a particular view on failure, because I think this is the one of the countries where you have a right to fail. You have a right to be stupid. And I say that because there are a lot of countries
that exercise that right.
Yeah, well, and I think that's an important right to exercise, because without that failure, there is no growth. It was, I can't remember who said it, but somebody basically said, I've learned more from failing than I have from succeeding. And that's because failure gives you the option and the ability to look and say what went wrong. And you ask that. When you succeed, you never ask the question, what went wrong?
How could I make this better?
Yeah, unless you specifically are like, oh, wait, what could I do better? Unless you're asking that, and it's not until you fail that you realize that that's an option to ask, because if you just succeed all the time, you never think, how could I do that better? That never ever, that concept of improvement never is enabled because you haven't failed. And I think that's, to some extent, I like to say we came to Earth to fail. There was only one person that was ever meant to succeed at Earth, and they were given significantly different resources and significantly different opportunities to succeed because they were going to do something. Yeah, because they brought them with them, and there was, I think, a significantly different plan for Jesus Christ, and his job wasn't learning; it was showing and providing an example and providing an atonement and providing a way back for those of us here.
The connotation of it, connect up with that as a job is usually given or imposed upon us.
Yeah.
Or demanded of us.
Yeah.
It was volunteer.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah, no, there is, and I'm glad you pointed that out because that is a bad way to put it. But I am man, so.
I was just thinking, the reason I brought it up is because it's helping me understand some people better. That I haven't really thought about before.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Distinction, powerful. Shift. It's something that President Kim Clark used to teach about at graduation time. At graduation, he would challenge, he'd give a couple of themes in what he said and what he challenged students to do. One was, to never let the world get into your heart. And the other one was, be the first to volunteer. We talked about kind of that pattern. That's in large part what made the Savior the Savior. It's his capacity to be the first to volunteer. And many of us follow that pattern. We don't usually. But if we want to become like our Savior, try that one for a while and see what it does to you.
Yeah.
I think you find that you grow a whole lot more when you're the first to volunteer. Something's different about it when you do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that kind of goes over my human management, which I think is where I saw a lot of growth. The next thing I would say is looking at project management in different contexts. and we've had a lot of conversations, so I'm not going to go into depth because we've kind of gone over religious, historical, children's stories, allegories, like Animal Farm, Lord of the Rings, Aesop's Fables. We see a lot of project management.
Those principles.
Yeah. And so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, so I'm going to kind of skim over that.
Okay. You can send me your essays on those, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll send what I have done. And then I think this is the other thing that I would mention is that and that. I reduced hours here and I postponed these specific kind of goals to some extent, or I reduced them significantly in such a way because I recognized that I didn't do so great at the beginning of the semester in time management. And I think that's something that I've been working on because I've spent
that in other places.
Right. Well, and I think there's a variability in understanding, what kind of classes I'm going to take, because you don't know how much time the class is going to require of you until you, and I say that because they estimate 3 to 4 hours per credit, if I'm understanding that right.
2 to 3.
2 to 3.
I'd say 2 to 3 outside of class, so 3 to 4 hours total.
Yeah, 3 to 4 hours total. So I've found that isn't very accurate in my case.
There's a lot wider range of variability in it, probably.
Yeah, and I say that because there are some classes that I have already studied and I know enough to, let's just get the work done, and it takes me maybe 2 or 3 hours a week, and it's a 3-credit class, and I'm getting all the work done in 2 or 3 hours when it should be taking me 9 to 12 hours. And then there are other classes that I spend a disproportionate amount of time, like that C++ class that I was telling you, the 124, or database, that took a significant amount of time each week, as I was learning that. And so I recognize that there's kind of a thing. But I have found that if I want to be successful, if I want to work, and I want to complete school, about 12 credits, plus or minus 1 credit. I don't want to get out of that range because then I can get in trouble. Now that means that I may have. Yeah, and I think that's kind of been the whole thing is recognizing that if I want to get the grades that I want to get. Yeah, and that's why I'm just kind of. Well, and I'm glad you didn't because it helps us keep track of the time. So I think I see that I recognize if I'm going to get the quality of experience out of the 15 credits that I signed up for this semester and to get my money's worth and not have to worry about, taking another D and having to retake a class, I would have to make cuts in other parts of my life. And so I took, I knew I was going to take a reduction in hours in work, but I took a little bit larger one than I anticipated. Okay. And I postponed that project entirely. That has been significantly reduced. Haven't worked as hard on my physical goals. And then kind of some social and personal time. I haven't spent as much time socializing and spending time on personal development.
Fit it all in.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. But I'm glad I did that because this has been the only semester that I've ever really pushed the number of credits and the hours and had a church calling like an executive secretary. And I can tell you this much, every day I do something. And it's either for my calling, and to some extent it's been a little bit like my executive secretary work. And it keeps coming together. I don't know why, but it still happens. And that's how I think that I've grown and I've realized that.
People's testimonies of tithing seems to sound very similar.
Well, and I think, if I hadn't have pushed myself to really see where the boundaries of my time are, because I've watched my sister from a young age push her time boundaries. She gets involved in a lot of things, and then other things suffer. And it's kind of been frustrating to me because if she's out doing a bunch of extracurricular activities, she's not helping with the chores at home. And so as a brother, it's kind of like, so I'd like some help because I don't want to be doing all these by myself, And so I think I'm glad that I pushed myself so far because now I know where my boundary is, and I've learned a lot more about my lifestyle quality and my lifestyle vision. I don't want to be running like this the entire life. I want to be able to,
Find a pace that you can live with. Yeah.
well, and I want to be able to enjoy my family more. I want to be able to enjoy my social and personal time. I want to be able to maintain my physical fitness goals and also do little projects on the side. Those are important to me, and so now I understand the worth of those and the worth of making sure that I'm spending the amount of time at work because I found it.
You're setting up just really easy. It's really easy for you to manage your life. Because you all have to just level up quality.
Yeah, I'm figuring it out by breaking myself a little bit, and I think that's good because now
And I'm still breaking.
yeah. Well, and I recognize that this probably like I'll never really perfect it because right
I think
here,
you can.
right there,
I think you can, but you won't get there without help.
right.
Like you've talked about, you gotta push yourself to a level where the Lord steps in and helps.
Well, and I think as we push ourselves, our spheres grow, thus changing what we're capable of. So you're trying to perfect something in which you're always changing. So I think that kind of presents an interesting anomaly because if you always keep pushing the boundary a little bit, your boundary does grow, and you kind of come back to that boundary and you push out a little bit more. You keep changing the goalposts on yourself.
That's the nature of the difference between salvation and exaltation.
Yeah.
Salvation going by, exaltation going by a little different bar. That's why General Conference, one of my favorite phrases that I've heard the last couple of conferences is that salvation is an individual matter, but exaltation is a family matter. Very true.
Yeah.
As much as any of us might like or not like that, it's true.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is. And that's where I think this kind of came in this is an experience that forced me to expand. And if I had just taken 12 credits, I just did what I could, this still would have pushed me. And that's because I never really realized. And I think, so this is actually a note, but I have a note at home that was specifically for me. A doctor's note that I excused my wife from work. And I have one for me to excuse me from school, but I never used that one. And I'm very happy I didn't use that one because it would have meant that I wouldn't have been here at school getting the experiences that I think I needed to be successful.
What's DO? Oh, I bet it's Doctor of Obstetrics. Okay.
Honestly, I don't know.
It's never bad to check the credentials of the people.
No, it isn't.
Because there's a difference.
Well, and my wife has been very diligent about doing the background, and she's talked with a lot of people about the various doctors that we were looking at going with. And I think that was kind of, I want to say that proved to me more than anything that I was able to spend the time that I needed to with my wife, still make sure that I get my classes and assignments worked out in such a way by communicating with teachers and saying, hey, listen, can I take these days off? And then recognizing that, hey, they worked with me a lot. And I also knew that at your class, and there's another class that the teacher specifically said at the beginning of the semester, you're big, yeah, be responsible. And so I didn't have to worry. And you probably never heard from me during that because I just knew. I was like, Brother Godfrey knows that I will make the right decision. And he trusts me to do that. And I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that some of my other teachers did.
Usually the pattern that gets you through that is increasing your level of communication. When you do that, usually things work out. Well,
and that's what I did with some other teachers that don't necessarily by default say, hey, be a big kid. And
even with the guys that say, hey, be a big kid, that communication still helps.
Yeah. Well, and I think to some extent, like I'm glad that you communicated with me and I understood early on, and now I can come back to you and talk to you about.
And you know, we're still there for you to do it.
Yeah, I'm very appreciative of all of my teachers that I was able to work with, and quite frankly, I appreciate you and the other teacher that just kind of said be a big kid, because I didn't have to worry. There was no stress about both of yours classes. It's you guys understand that there's a family, there's church, and there's things that are going to happen.
And trust is a very powerful model.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to continue to invest in that trust, or else it's gone after a while. It erodes, something breaks it. If you go on a trust model, you've got to continue to invest in that trust.
Right. And I think I mean, you're the one who said that you were going to have trust. And I hope that I've utilized that trust very well. And I think that's why I also wanted to bring it up, is because I feel like
the one piece of advice I give is not for my benefit. I felt like I saw enough in you. I trusted you were in communication with me. I knew things were. You've come back and talked to me since. But you realize there's other people in the class that looked around and just saw empty seats and thought, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think a high degree of communication, so that others in the class understood where you were, what you were doing, why you were doing it, what you were still learning, and how you were still handling things in the process, would have influenced them for the better as well. That's the one thing that I consistently find this in my classes, is that when we get to this model of, people decide, well, whoever speaks first, whoever speaks loudest gets their way, every man for himself, is kind of the model that evolves in this class.
Mm-hmm.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And we don't acknowledge what we're giving up.
Yeah.
When we don't communicate, when we don't share, when we don't help each other see where we're going, where we're learning, where we're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of lessons that we missed this semester because of that.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you bring that up, because that's something that I wasn't necessarily going to focus on, but I do think, since you do bring it up, might as well.
I don't have one person accountable for it all.
Yeah.
I just mean,
it's a collective failure or success.
If we learn how to become collective.
Yeah.
And it's one thing for somebody to require it and make assignments that force it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally other thing to say, no, it's up to you guys, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
How many of us would really choose to build something collective?
Mm-hmm.
In the afternoon class, they built a little bit more of a culture of discussion that was driven from about 4 or 5 students, and everybody else just kind of was there.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 or 5 students affected a culture that helped that flow of communication get better.
Mm-hmm.
And they all walked away with something good from it.
Yeah.
Did they get to the highest levels? No. But they were built on something.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to evaluate, I step back every semester and try to evaluate, how is the class? And I'd have to say, as I evaluate your section of the class, it was very strong.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't ever really feel like we functioned as a class.
Yeah.
Closest we came were the guys that at the end of the surveys trying to figure out, hey, what happened, what we learned from it, that kind of thing. People gave them some good feedback, and it started to feel like there's something happening here.
Yeah.
But that's as far as it really went. For the most part, it was we came to class. We might endure somebody talking to us for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anybody really got a lot of value out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was every man for himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could do better. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't terrible. I'm not going to pitch a fit and say you're the worst class,
Yeah.
because you weren't.
Well, and
But
I think to some extent, my conversations outside the class probably weren't observed by you.
Mm-hmm. But that's where some of the best of it comes
Yeah.
from, right?
Well, and that's where, I ended up talking with Eric and Alex a lot, occasionally Jordan. I think I talked to Jordan outside class once or twice. But Eric and Alex, I spent a lot more time talking with about the class. And early on, we ended up spending more time conversating about the class. And this past week, Alex called me. He's like, oh, yeah, I went in for my evaluation. I'm sure you're familiar with how that went. I hope it went well for him. I never heard back after he went in for another bit. But he was like, hey, did you talk to him about this? And that was something that him and I had, and Eric had been all doing, is just talking about, like, I went and I was just like, talk to you. I remember our first meeting to some extent. And when I say our first meeting, I'm saying when I came to you and said, "Hey, by the way, you're my academic advisor, and I've never met you, so I just kind of
We
wondered."
probably ought to talk about this.
Yeah. and then the first meeting in this class, I was like, by showing initiative before the class, I need to continue to show initiative in class. And I think that's kind of what, and I don't expect you to remember our first meeting to some extent because I remember meeting.
Remember a little bit. I remember a little.
Well, to some extent, after being an executive secretary, there's a lot of perspective in building up, and just you see so many different people. It's like they remember their experiences with you, but for you to try and remember 100 different experiences with 100, yeah, naturally.
Sometimes I do need to go back. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, now I remember that.
Yeah. So, I think that works out great.
I wouldn't do that as a bishop.
Oh,
I
yeah,
had a
yeah.
very private channel or something.
Yeah.
My own hard drive.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where the Spirit comes into play. That's your private hard drive.
It brings to your number.
Its security is impeccable.
Yeah, that's true. Awesome.
But I think those conversations where we would talk about, to some extent, our experiences with you. And I remember just being like, Brother Godfrey said, come visit him. So go visit him,
Yeah.
And so that's where those meetings started in this class with you and me.
But he didn't require me to, so I don't know if I can.
Right. So I was just like, this actually works in my favor to some extent because it's on me to produce something to conversate with you and to understand, what are you looking to get out of the class when you're looking for growth. And I realized that. And I had a hard time with Jordan to some extent because I got very frustrated with him at the end of the class. And it frustrated me because
he got very frustrated.
I know. He was very vocal about how frustrated he was with you. And Alex and I kind of were frustrated with him being frustrated about the class because Jordan's idea is he's a very libertarian guy politically. And I was like, dude, this is the perfect class for you.
This should be right up your alley. That's kind of what I thought. The whole time. Why isn't this working?
and to me, it kind of was a little ironic.
Oh, we're at time.
Oh, we're at time. Yeah. All right.
Can you send me all you got? I like to have artifacts that
Yeah.
help support and back up our conversations and where this all ends up. So
Yeah, I can send you all this. Well, I'll attempt to send it to you.
Yeah,
We'll see.
We'll see how close you come. And if it doesn't come, I'll know why.
Yep.
But at least I can say I saw it.
Yeah.
And you can send it to me later if you have to do a hard drive extraction.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't have
How are
to
you?
do a hard drive extraction.
Feeling shiny today? Are you feeling sunshine? More glorious and bright. Okay. I'm gonna need them.
All right, I'll send you a here.
Okay. Sounds all ominous.
He'll grill you, the entire time.
I think you're my last guy in here, so either way is comfortable for me. Everyone's showing up, but you never know the last day who's going to show up and who's not. Hey, Ethan, did you want a chocolate?
Sure. I'll take one to go.
Chocolates, you're getting some pickings now.
Right on. Yeah, that's fine.
Looks like you get two because you're the last one. So you get the bonus. So that one is a cranberry. Kind of fun. That was an experiment this year, so I don't know if they're any good or not. Yeah. Is that one worth making again? Mm-hmm. Okay. My wife's really big on it. I'm not sure if I'm convinced yet. That's why we experiment. It's kind of fun. We get to be we're kind of chocolate snobs now, though, because I won't eat other kinds of chocolate, because I like the ones that I get to experiment on. They're kind of fun.
Yeah, they probably don't have a lot of emulsifiers.
Yeah.
Other stuff.
It's straight sugar, pretty much, but That's why we only do it once a year.
I think the size is pretty good too. Because if somebody only wants one, they can just take one.
Mhm.
Don't talk about
Mhm.
it. And they want one,
Yeah.
they can take two.
All right.
Okay, so I have a report for you.
Okay. Either way works for me.
We probably don't want to do it right now. Actually,
Okay.
Yeah, so here we are.
Yep. We made it.
It's the last day. I was actually apprehensive. I was like, I don't know if I can. The schedule says it is open, but I don't know. It's like that.
It gets crazy
I
this
just
time. Yep. Try to keep my calendar up to date, and then I try to stick with it as close as I can. It's a fun thing to manage when you're meeting with people face to face, because we're not used to having conversations that are time managed. Right?
I guess so. I wish this year.
You kind of had to work that schedule a little bit flexibly, right? Try to find ways that allow me to do the same. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like I'm getting better at it over time. The next person is 2 o'clock. Actually, that means nobody can schedule it. Give you a 2 hour advance block time. So if they're gonna come, they're just gonna show up at this point.
Okay. Well, so ideally I would have sent this to you, well, a while ago, and then this meeting we would have talked about it. Yes, I like this.
That's why you challenge people to be done by midterm. Because then we have time to work together on things. We don't have to be, hopefully we're good friends by the end of the semester. I try to be good friends sometimes. I don't like to have to just be a mean guy.
Well, I see you as me. So,
Most people tell me I'm not very good at it, even when I try. So I try sometimes.
okay.
Just email it.
Yeah. So, now I guess.
There it is.
Did it send you the cloud version or the real version?
Looks like it's coming from SharePoint, but I think it created a copy. It's going to take a minute. We've got some other stuff. Here you go.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
So, in this meeting that we have, I guess I'm just trying to reconcile this. And to avoid getting F, but to avoid getting A also. Yeah. So, I feel like my overall performance in the semester was pretty good, but could have been a lot better. And I suppose this is coming down. My progression in coursework, particularly, project-wise, I mean, I completed one big project, one like kind of media project, and aside from working other stuff, I think that those went well. And I actually finished them well. One of them, of course, is finished, and Code in the Dark is, I guess, each one is a little finished.
We had an iterative kind of cycle on that one, right?
Yeah. Okay, so
What did you do?
No.
Come back to it.
Well, I really want to hear stuff from you because I only know so much in my head, and I don't know the right questions to be asking.
One question I have for you is, what kinds of things, what did you change in between each iteration of the Code in the Dark? And did it yield what you thought it would yield? Every time you made a change, how you approached it, did it constitute the improvement that you were hoping for?
Well, yes and no.
Okay,
So,
that sounds like a real project.
okay, well,
Because usually that's how I answer most of them. Well, yes and no.
I did put a little bit of this in the report. But basically, the actual execution of the Code in the Dark itself, finding websites that would fit within this kind of skill range, that kind of stuff, like that took some time, but it wasn't impossible. And so there's kind of two sides to the answer to your question. On the technical side, I was always trying to improve the event itself. So like trying to get some kind of inspiration from other Code in the Dark events. Obviously not doing it to quite the extent they were doing it because apparently those events are very not UI code. So like lots of alcohol, open bar, that's like no smokers probably do that. And it's very loud most of the time. I didn't want to do that exactly, but I wanted to grab some stuff from it. So I think in about the second and third, third, fourth, fifth time we had music. So I put on there's a game called Hacknet, and it's about it looks pretty sophisticated. Don't thank me for but yeah, they have a great soundtrack for that. And I put that on, and it just helped to. Because the first two times it was just kind of quiet, with occasional like people are like, how do I do this thing?
Yeah.
So I was always trying to improve the experience. Like I had with me? Like I have a laser pointer thing that's that kind of green color, that dark green color. They have laser shows at Code in the Dark events. Well, some of them. I didn't really have anything like that. I wasn't going to buy anything or rate for that. But for long, it's bright laser pointing. You see the green beam. That's really cool. Chinese stuff. But I brought it in later iterations to show people, hey, this is what to do. So just vaguely kind of pointing to the screen. This is that. We also talked as a leadership of the CIT Society and saying, should we provide some training to people afterwards? And one time we did do that, where we just said, okay, well, now we've got this Code in the Dark. We have like 20 minutes left of the hour slot, for the meeting for the CIT Society. What if we just go over this particular HTML principle? I think it was something to do with so yeah, from kind of a more personal standpoint, yeah, not as much improvement, not really any. In fact, looking at it from the outside in, it was was worse. It got worse over time because less people were showing up as time went on. And eventually, we had, I think the last one had 2 people there. And, so while
And how late in the semester were you
well, the last event was 2 weeks ago. No,
Just
2 or 3 weeks ago.
after Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
All blurs together now. Huh?
We had an event around Thanksgiving, either before or right after, that Tuesday after. I can't remember. But that was the last one, because the next week we did I think that's what it was. The next week we did some kind of event. And the next week Isaac basically canceled on the rest of the meetings. Okay, whatever. So, so the event was as good as it had ever been. I mean, it was the best iteration of itself at that point. And the web, I did a lot of work in doing the website, I didn't make the website, but like it was based off of GitHub, so trying to recreate the GitHub page. Cool. So I dug into the code and tried to find the little like code patterns on the back, and, so that they could put that in their code and trying to recreate it. My only big problem was the top menu bar. And I was like, if we have them recreate that, they could spend 20 minutes just on one time. So I just put it as a picture. But if you go to the website, you can see. I put the link to the website and hopefully it'll update in the future. But yeah, I feel like that could have been better. And I feel like, once again, maybe throughout most of these projects, I'm noticing a pattern. And so kind of just focusing on the project. The thing is, it seems like most of the things I do in my life involve other people, and other people going to them, attending them. Even work, like my job relies on people not knowing what to do. And like choir performances, this Come in the Dark event, Disciple Leader Conference, like they all kind of hinge. Well, they don't hinge, but like they people are supposed to go to them, and if no one really shows up, then it's effectiveness. Yeah, what's the point of doing all this preparation and all these hours of work if nobody comes and uses it? Yeah, so I think that was a big realization for me with Dark and
I think there's a natural quality and learning curve that comes with iteration. To do things over and over and over again with the purpose in mind that we're going to make it better next time, we're going to make it better next time, we're going to make it better next time. I think it's really powerful, and I think that's why you see that as a major pattern that a lot of the agile movement is based around. A lot of agile project management technique and pattern of thought revolves around that central pattern of iteration. Not the only pattern in it, but I think it's probably one of the most prominent. Just the recognition that there's a good chance we won't get it right the first time, but if we keep at it, keep trying, we'll probably get a whole lot closer to making it what we want it to be, and helping it become something that everybody is happy with. That's one of the fundamental differences of why software is different than a lot of other kinds of projects out there. It's why it's still the CIT class for project management rather than some other discipline. I think it's because the IT industry took a stand and tried to say, what we do is a little different than what everybody else does. We're going to try and make that difference become a strength instead of a weakness, or instead of something that we just gloss over and say our projects are like everybody else's projects. I think that's an important thing to understand when we approach a variety of projects. Software development, web development, IT projects tend to be the kinds of things that we can do over. you build a house, it doesn't make any sense to build that over and over and over and over and over again. It's too expensive. It just doesn't make sense. Which is why they use linear waterfall type of patterns, because they work in that industry. It helps you get to higher quality. We can in software development too, but there are so many times where we don't have to do it that way. It's for exploring alternative approaches. We're out of time though. Yeah. Do you have thoughts? Wrap up with?
Well, I don't know.
Are you still nervous about a grade? Or are there other things?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Did you, in your report, did you establish any kind of claim on a grade? Did you establish any kind of quality management system approach to what needs to look for? Some students feel they've got to do it that way, so they do it that way. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I didn't want to be too presumptuous to do that.
Even though I challenged you to and encouraged you to all semester. It's not presumptuous when your teacher's asking you to.
So maybe I should put based on this report, I could just verbalize it. Well, I think that based on your criteria that you outlined in past conversations about how you really only fail people if they sort of don't do the projects. Probably assume that about my failed class, and I prefer that.
I think you've shown plenty of evidence in your report and what you've done.
Yeah.
I don't think I could justify failing you.
I don't think I should get an A. And the more middle ground, I guess, is B, C, most of me wants to say that I should receive a C plus or whatever the equivalent of that is in class. Another part of me is like, well, you know, you went to basically every class 4 weeks on it. It's
You endured it, right?
You actually completed your projects
Yeah, you
that you
did.
set out to do, so you should get a B in that sort of. So that's the part I'm up in the air about, and I really can't say definitively, well, based on this 30-column criteria thing, I should get a B. I feel like I probably should get a C, but looking from the outside in, one could say, well, maybe you can get a B, and that's, I guess, what's up to you. And
I describe it in 2 different ways. One, if I look at it from your competence, and we have to do this for an accreditation thing, we have to evaluate our students based on whether they fall into an unsatisfactory bucket, a developing bucket, a proficient bucket, or an outstanding bucket. They give us 4 buckets.
okay.
I would say as I watch your capacity in your everyday work life and your everyday interactions, you're pretty solid, right between developing and proficient, mostly proficient. Because I see your level of success in the projects that you engage with, and your level of professionalism and how you engage with people. If I look at it from the growth perspective, growth, when I wrap the traditional project management kind of mindset around it, I think you've identified that you didn't grow in those areas as much as you could have. So I'm kind of in the same boat. Somewhere between a C and a B. I don't know where we end up. Somewhere in there.
I'm
So I'll go back and read through your report and see where that lands. But that's kind of where. Somewhere in there.
yeah. Taiwan. Really. Let me tell you something real quick.
Okay.
This is slightly related to the class. So while working on this report, I had my final project due for networking class for electronics. class, I sit next to I sit and over the course of the semester, he had forgotten to turn in probably about 5 labs. And I was always like, how could that happen? Like, how do you do it and forget to do it?
Yeah, and forget to turn it in.
So, by result of that, the highest grade he could possibly get was a B plus. So, that was very interesting. I mean, I had this made me feel kind of uncomfortable because I was like, oh well, I have like 97%. And he had done it. He had done all the work for it, but it blocks on Saturday night, and if you're doing something else or whatever, that's that. No matter how completed it is or how perfect it is, you don't turn it in. Okay. So, ironically, that happened to me. So, on a project I was doing yesterday, and I completed it in almost exact time. However, once I had saved the file and closed the program, I was like, finally I'm done with this thing.
Yeah.
So I went up to get something else, whatever it was, and came back, and it's just like, you entered the room and forgot why you were there. And so I entered back into my room and forgot why I was there, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you see this. So I start, doing some finishing work on this report, and I was turning on some music or whatever. My roommate had moved out by then, so it was just me. Here we are, 12:41 a.m. That's not a time.
Almost 12 hours ago.
Yes, 12:41 a.m. or whatever it is. And realization hits me. I didn't see it. And so my grade in that class has gone from a 97 to an 82. And maybe that was supposed to happen. I don't know. But it was this kind of extreme wake up moment after the 10 minutes of initial shock and frustration. I was like, it's funny that I had spent so much time in this class, in networking class, trying to make sure that these were accurate and precise and doing work. I spent less time in project management class. And now it doesn't matter because I got a lower grade than Isaac, who now got, with this a lot of slack on me. I'm running the edge there. And there's nothing I can do about it at all.
This is where, isn't it interesting to look at the patterns and systems that we develop to try to capture and report on the quality of our learning? I think that's what we're trying to do in school. I think it's a really interesting puzzle to develop a quality management approach that is meaningful and accurate and reflects learning. I don't know how to build the perfect system to do that. But that's why I invite you into the process, is because it's worth exploring to try to understand how do we evaluate learning and growth. How do we experiment with quality approaches to get us close, or at least get us in the ballpark? It's a fun challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think we don't do people favors by keeping them outside of the school. think the reason why we do it is because part of it is a subconscious. We don't want people to see what we know we don't understand ourselves. And as teachers, I don't know of anybody that I've ever talked to that feels like they have a grading system that does what we think it's supposed to do. Provides accurate feedback that gives students opportunity for growth. It gives them feedback that helps them see exactly where they are. That helps you see your growth over time. I think that's what grades are intended to accomplish. I don't know if it's developed a system that maybe fully accomplishes what it's supposed to accomplish. And I think that's part of why we leave the student outside of it. We don't want them to know. We want them to think that we've got this under control. We know how to do grading. We know how to do school. We know how to evaluate your growth and your kid. Just trust us.
That's what Dr. Green's gets you, right?
It gives you the ability to hopefully let people trust you to experiment on them. Okay?
Oh yeah. By the way, your academic future is
Yeah. Isn't that nice of us?
yeah. Well, that's a pretty meta conversation we have. I'm sorry for going over time. I realize you have something you want to do. Probably eat lunch or whatever.
Yeah, that's what we're headed in next.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in. I wish we could have had more conversations throughout the semester, but don't be a stranger after the semester.
Well, I doubt I will be, because I will be exclusively in this building.
Yeah.
The rest of my stuff, career, generals for the semester. Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed working with you so far. I hope we get to do some other good stuff in the future. Did you want the other one?
Well, you made them. I figured that.
I've got plenty more at home. Don't worry about that. That's what I'm trying to give away today.
Okay. I feel like if I take this, you're gonna have another person. Well, wait a second. What about your 2 o'clock thing?
If it's on, then I don't have to have it out.
No, I think the 2 o'clock guy or girl should have that one because I've had one already.
Okay.
And they haven't. And I assume they have that A.
I
So
don't think so. Yeah.
okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Get there.
Yeah.
See ya.
Ryan Cross, who is the TA for 111.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He's awesome. Brother Miles has a really big class. And he said to Ryan, I think I'm going to need 2 TAs in class every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's fine. And Ryan's like, but I don't think he needs them. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't see a problem with it, but I thought I would just run it by you. One's saying, yeah, he won't need them, but Brother Miles wants one, so you give him one, right?
How big is big? What's he jumping from?
So 40 to 10 extra.
Did you run with 40s in the past with one TA?
Yeah. Ryan's
I think when you're at 50, I'm okay with doing it. So when you get up around 50, I think seems justifiable to me.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know if that was
It's probably a situation where Ryan is extremely efficient as a TA. If it's a guy like Ryan, Ryan's probably right. If it's other TAs, you probably need 2.
And I don't think Ryan, I think, does both guys have 2 of that class? Because it may be that Ryan Cross may not be in both of his. I know it's going to be more. Okay, so I'll just, which means we need to hire one more TA. The other thing too, because there's not enough coverage.
Gotta hire a CAT intern as well. I didn't get on that one fast enough.
All right, well, I had a student in mind, so I'll email her and see if she's, do you know Vivian? What's her last name? Vivian. Anyway, she's awesome. She actually kind of TA'd unofficially all through classes last semester anyway.
Yeah.
She's great. All right, so I will let Mary Jo know then. Well, I guess do I have Mary Jo offer, or do I? I'm trying to remember.
You could probably talk to her about it, and then Mary Jo will help her get it on board and oriented and all those kinds of things.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Are you there? Hi, Claire. How are you? You're still smiling. Good. It's good to hear from you. You think so? What's that?
She's not my daddy, my daddy, and then Mine has mac and cheese too.
You like mac and cheese?
Yeah.
That'd be yummy, huh? I was having some mashed potatoes.
Daddy, can you read? I'm sure it's not on now, but the last time, can you come home to later after the work?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to come home really late tonight 'cause I gotta go to a graduation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be there, but I'll be kinda late tonight, huh?
Oh.
I may have to come give you a kiss after you go to sleep tonight. Is that okay?
I think I'm sorry because last time everybody's ready. Probably not. Everybody's just ready to Shelly.
Yeah. I think so.
But wake up
How
and
are you doing?
the kids will wake up and then
I'm on the phone here too.
Because you got a baby on the way? Or
because Shelly will
oh,
come home and they say, picnic. Bye, my dad.
Bye, Claire. I see you tonight, Kay.
Hi,
Hi, how you doing?
you have a good conversation.
Yeah, she's gonna talk my leg off if we're not careful.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of got distracted with finishing something up, but I forgot she was talking to me for a minute. She just kept going and going.
She's doing great. She's a good conversationalist.
This is good. How's your day been?
Pretty good. I finally got to my lull in my schedule after having constant appointments for about a week solid now.
Good.
Yeah.
That is great.
All okay for today, and the fact that I'm abandoning you and letting you take care of, 7 different directions at once tonight.
I'm trying not to think about it too much. I'll deal with it when it gets here.
Uh-huh. But I promise that I'll stay home the next 2 days and take care of it for you. How's that?
Thanks. I wish I was going to be home. That's what I wish I could do, is spend time with you, but you're going to be grading anyway, so might as well just leave. And you don't get mad at me.
They might need some. I can't figure out whether they need help with this other scout troop this week or not, because at one point they were asking for people that could help drive people down to Freeman Park. They're going to see lights down there.
Okay.
And then they went through a whole bunch of coordination, and then I can't tell what they decided. So I'm not sure if they're still looking for help or not. So I haven't responded to them.
That would be kind of fun to do with our family.
That's kind of what I
Usually we
figured.
do that, but
So if they needed it, I figured we might be able to take some of us down, but we'll see. For all of us.
yeah. What's going on Thursday? Do we have anything?
Nothing on the calendar.
I
That's
don't
why.
think we do.
Mm.
Oh, that's new. Sweet.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I got a call from Bishop Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Just was bringing up some small talk, and I kind of was wondering, okay, why is he
Michael's
calling?
texting me
And he's like, you're probably wondering why I'm calling. I'm like, no, but yeah, I was.
Okay.
So he should be
I've got some students and somebody calling me all at once. Looks like I better jump on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's him.
We'll
Okay.
talk to you later.
Love you. See ya.
Okay, that's Michael in regards to this.
Hey, this is Corey.
The other student has a problem with the test?
I've got Conrad that just came in. I haven't talked to him yet. He's just stepping in here. And yeah, Mary Jo just tells me that you're calling about the same thing. So yeah, Conrad, you want to let us know what's up?
Yeah, so I was in the middle of the final, and I realized that some of the questions were improperly labeled, because I actually talked to who's the other teacher? It's a brother Miller. Yeah, he went over his test, and he said that the questions weren't labeled properly, and they were supposed to say this instead of that. Because these ones are referring to, it says we have to have a picture of a relationship model.
Okay.
Yeah, the model isn't showing up in those questions on the online test, which we copied.
Okay.
And that's because there are no changes in the model. I'm sorry, Brother Miller gave you his opinion, but his opinion isn't valid to my class.
Is it still, so it's question 6, the same one that shows up in question 6?
So it's the same as question 6 then?
It's the same model as you have installed in your system. So if you look at the questions you have, right, there's no change to those tables.
Okay, so you can go just refer to what's in the image. You pull up that.
You don't have to make any changes to the table to run the test.
Okay.
Okay.
And then question I guess 12 and 13 was the same way, and then question 14 didn't have anything. But one of the things that
it didn't have a question, it looks like.
Yeah, there's no question, there's no explanation on it.
Oh, yeah, that's the question right there.
There's no explanation on it?
Yeah, but it just kind of...
It's a select query, and then at the bottom it's just asking whether it works or not, and what does it return. So yeah, it's still a question. This is the question. Here's where you give your answer.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then some of the...
Send me screenshots of them, and if there's a problem with them, I'll fix them. But
some of the issues also is with Canvas. Supposedly, he was saying that Brother Miller, that the answers don't display the whole answer. That it just kind of for each unique, and it cuts it off, and you can't read the rest of it.
That probably just depends on your.
What do you mean? Canvas is cutting off the question?
Yeah.
I think it looks to me like it's based on your screen resolution settings. Oh no, it's showing it there.
No, it's stopping it still.
Oh, it is cutting off just a little bit.
Yeah. And I tried both Chrome and Safari.
And it's still showing the whole thing.
So it's not giving me the whole answer either.
Well, I can be over there in about 30 minutes or so, so I'll take a look at it then if you want to come to my office.
I'll be here.
So I'll just need some screenshots in the meantime.
I'm sorry that the online is copied over from online, so.
It's kind of what I figured, that they copied it, and it was kind of...
There's a lot of not quality control in those processes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
No one else has raised the question, so I don't know if it's just how it's displaying for you, or if it's in general how bad it is.
Okay.
Right? So what I'll do is I'll bring the questions up on my computer while you're doing it, and then we can look at them.
Okay.
See what's wrong.
Sounds good. Thank you.
There were a few changes Brother Miller asked for at the last minute, and last week, and they went into the system and made some changes. I'm not sure if those changes left any of the questions damaged. So let me come in and take a look. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
Good. Hey, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Yep. Sounds like he can answer it better than I can.
Sounds like it. He can too. So.
How's life?
It's going. Just trying to finish here. My grandfather's dying, so semester's been fun.
You heard about nursing in this building?
Time. Yeah.
Where is he?
He's in Tucson. Yeah.
Close to him?
not here. He's just, yeah, he got put to a home just yesterday, or the day before.
Okay. I'll get to work on that.
Alright, well, thank you.
Good luck with it.
Alright.
See you, Conrad.